Good day, this is Terry Difazio and you're watching Dial It Up. Today my guest is Mark Higley. Mark is currently the representative from the District of Orleans-Lamoille County.
Correct.
Good to have you on the show.
Thank you.
I know I wanted to get you on here, not to this particular show, but another show that I did a couple of years ago, but injuries, death, and pestilence did their thing.
Well, glad to be here this time.
Tell me, Mark, what committees are you on?
I'm on one committee, and that's Government Operations Committee.
Okay.
And I've been on that same committee for 8 years now.
Okay. Can you explain a bit about it? Because most of us don't know exactly what all these committees are and do. And I would imagine even some of the ones that are more obvious, still there's other things that go on that we don't quite know.
Right. Well, the Government Operations Committee deals with pretty much what it says, government operations throughout the state. We deal with charter changes, so cities and towns that propose charter changes to their charters come in. We look those over and make sure they're constitutional and legit. We deal with election law.
Oh, okay.
We deal with things like public records. We deal with open meeting laws. Things like that.
So you're a bit like a watchdog in a way.
In a sense, yes. We have a lot, the Secretary of State is in a lot. We deal with the Office of Professional Regulation as well, and they regulate industry throughout the state. So, yeah, we're busy. We deal with the Public Safety Division, the State Police, and so on throughout the state of Vermont. We've worked on, the example would be a taser bill to have a kind of a statewide standard for the use of the taser and the ability for police to get the training to use it.
Okay. Are there any committees that you would like to be on?
Well, when I originally went in, it's kind of like the military. You have a wish list that you put on as to what committees you'd like to be on, and agriculture was one of those.
Because that's what your background is in.
I do have a mini farm. I have some draft horses and beef animals and chickens and all that. And I worked on farms when I was in high school and so on. So
you wanted to get on that committee?
I would have liked to, but it doesn't matter. I mean, I'm glad to be on government operations and appreciate the work that is done on that committee.
Now, are there specific agencies you work with or oversee, or is this just like a statewide thing?
Well, no, there's, like I said, we deal with public safety, so a lot of times we have the Public Safety Commissioner Keith Flynn come in a lot.
Oh, okay.
Secretary of State Jim Condos comes in.
Okay.
So, yeah, it all depends on what issue we're involved in as to what groups come in and testify, but those are two that come in quite often. The Vermont Leagues of Cities and Towns is another one, because we deal with a lot of the the laws that have to do with regulating cities and towns.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Are there any that are easier to work with or harder to work with?
No, I wouldn't say so. No, it's
all about the same.
Yeah, and some of it gets pretty involved. You have to become knowledgeable as to just what they do and how they do it, each agency.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what year were you first elected to the House?
Well, I went in 2009, so it was the last 2 years of the Douglas administration.
Okay. And were you opposed or unopposed on that one?
I ran against Dexter Randall.
Oh,
who
yes,
was a-
now I remember. Yes, that is a name from the past, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So he was the incumbent.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was Patricia Sears.
Sears
also
ran on that. Yes,
jumped in
I
there.
remember that.
Yep.
I remember now because I filmed it.
Oh.
There was about 8 people around the room at the Hebert building, wasn't there? I remember Bobby Starr was there, and I remember, there was several, there was a whole bunch of people there. I remember it now.
Yeah.
I remember it. So, what is your level of education?
Well, I went through high school,
Okay.
and then after high school, I went right into the service.
Okay, which branch of the military?
And I went into the U.S. Navy Seabees, which is construction.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was a carpenter and builder, and I took after him in that regards. And after I got out of the service as well, I started my own business. So I've been in business for myself since 1978.
Oh, okay.
When I got out.
How many years were you in the service?
4.
You were in
4
4?
years, yeah.
Okay.
And I had the opportunity to go overseas. I was in a mobile construction battalion.
Okay.
So I went to Guam, Diego Garcia, which is in the Indian Ocean.
Mm-hmm.
And my last tour was in Japan.
Oh, okay. So what years were those, Mark?
1974 to 1978.
Yes, things have changed a bit since then.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
How would you feel about going into the military now?
Well, I think it's still a great opportunity. I just had my brother had a boy that just graduated, wasn't sure what he wanted to do, and believe it or not, he's gone into the Marines.
Okay.
And I think for so many kids that haven't decided what route they want to take, I think it teaches you respect, it teaches you patience. I mean, you've got to wait in line to eat, you've got to wait in line to get paid, you have to wait in line to do just about everything, and so it really teaches you how to get along with your other folks that you work with, and so I think it's a good opportunity.
Okay. And how many years has he signed up for? 4?
I believe so.
Okay. What other organizations do you belong to?
Well, I belong to the Vermont Sugar Makers Association.
Oh,
'cause
really? Okay.
I also have a small sugar in operation. The Vermont Beef Producers Association, because I
Mhm.
raise some beef, and then the Farm Bureau. I've supported the Vermont Land Trust for many years, and so that's about it, I guess, for right now, active organizations that I'm a member of.
So you're involved in several of them.
Mm-hmm. Now,
do you find that belonging to these organizations helps you as a legislator?
Sure, it gives me a perspective from those organizations as to what they have to deal with different Vermont laws that are put in place.
Okay. And I take it that they speak to you about their issues and they use you as a sounding board for the legislature?
Not
or
so
not?
much. No,
No?
they really don't know that I am a legislator a lot of the times. So, yeah, yeah.
So I guess it's good to be invisible, sort of.
Yeah, it is at times. But yeah, as a member, I'm just like any other member, and I use being a member, especially like, let's say, the Vermont Beef Producers Association, they have a fall sale and a spring sale, and I bring my animals. I have like a cow-calf operation, and I bring them to the fall sale like anybody else, and hope for the best pricing.
Mm-hmm. So tell us, for those of us that have never actually been to Montpelier and seen a session. I've been to Montpelier, but I've never actually seen a session. What's it like working in the House? And maybe you could even contrast it with what it's like working in the Senate.
Mm-hmm. Well, since I've been down there, I've been in what they call the super minority, or the other way is to say that there's been a super majority of Democrats down there.
Mm-hmm.
The committee process, which I'm on the Government Operations Committee, as we talked about,
Yep.
is a lot different from the floor process. The committee process, you're generally one member out of 11 members that are on the committee, 10 or 11 members. You have a little more input, a little more say, a little more ability to question the folks that are coming in to testify. And after that process, you take a vote in committee, and then if that is approved, it would go to the floor, and then there's floor action, floor conversation, and then a vote. And I guess, the difference that I've seen is pretty much when a bill goes to the floor, if it goes to the floor, in the years that I've been down there, it's going to pass. And that's the way the majority sets it up. The majority is not going to take up something in a committee that they don't approve of. And whether that's right or wrong, that's the way that I've seen it since I've been down there.
Okay. For better or for worse, you think?
Again, people need to understand that, and that's why they need to make a good decision when they're voting on the legislators that go down there as to how they feel about that legislator and how that legislator is going to represent them, because again, there's I think it was talked about that there was over 1,000 bills in this past biennium.
Oh, okay, wow.
Yep, that were drafted. What they do is once they're drafted, they go into the committee rooms and they're put up on a bulletin board on an actual index card.
I've heard about that.
Yeah.
I heard
Yeah.
Bobby Starr talk about that once, but please explain more about it.
Yeah, so again, a legislator who has an idea for a bill would go to legislative council. We have attorneys down there that draft up the legislation. A lot of times it's with help from different groups, lobbying groups, whatever it might be. You look at that draft. If you're comfortable with it, you can also get other legislators to sign on, be co-sponsors of a bill, and then once you're satisfied with that draft, then it goes to the committee in jurisdiction. So, and again, though, this is where I believe that it all depends on the leadership in the House, which would be the Speaker of the House.
And who is that right now?
Shap
Is that
Smith.
Shap? That's
Yeah.
right. He was last I knew.
Yeah. So he pretty much makes the determination whether or not a bill will be taken up in committee.
Okay.
Our chair, in particular, had a process called 5 minutes of fame, where they would bring in, no matter how many bills there were on the wall, the individual who sponsored the bill or a co-sponsor would come in and explain why they introduced the bill and what the purpose of it is and so forth. So at least you got an opportunity to talk about the bill a little bit. But really, ones that actually get serious consideration and taken up are pretty much chosen by the Speaker.
Oh, okay. So he pretty much dictates what's going to be discussed or what's not.
Correct.
How many bills have you sponsored or co-sponsored?
I don't really know. It's quite a few. I'd say maybe sponsor as little as 2 or 3. Co-sponsored quite a number, because a lot of times fellow legislators will come to you and say, I've got this idea, Mark, would you sign on? And I read the bill, and if it's something that I support, I'd sign on.
Well, that's a good idea, because it seems that the legislature, not just the House, but the Senate, there seems to be a lot of legislators from the western part of the state and not many from the eastern part of the state. And I've often wondered how that happened, because in Washington we have 2 senators and we have equal representation by population, but that doesn't seem to be the case in Montpelier, does it?
Well, it is. When the census comes out, each representative represents a little over 4,000 individuals. So it's just that Chittenden County and Windham County, whatever it is, are more populated and they get the numbers.
Yeah, but there seem to be a disproportionate number of senators also.
Senators, right. Yeah, is a little, right. A lot of people have talked about, there's 14 counties, there should be 28
Yeah,
senators.
I would tend to agree,
Yeah.
like, and I just think it's very, very heavily slanted in their favor. I like a lot of things that they do over in Chittenden County, but I sometimes feel that we're getting, shortchanged a bit.
No, I think you're right. It is hard for the Northeast Kingdom because of the numbers to express our opinions and get our points across. One bill that I did, it had to be actually go through the rules, so it was a resolution, was there's 13 other states that have a limit on the number of bills that you can propose,
Oh,
be a sponsor of.
oh, okay.
And it was 5 during the session, which is not unreasonable to me. And again, if I had my 5, I could co-sponsor a bill. I could ask another member, hey, here's my idea, you want to sponsor it, I'll co. So it didn't really limit it in a sense, but again, it might make you think a little bit more about a bill that you introduce before you introduce a dog, what breed of dog you want to represent the state of Vermont, or something like that. It does take time for drafting, money as well, because you have to pay the attorneys that are down there.
Mm-hmm. You led me into another question I had just barely thought of, and it's funny, you said something about it. Are there a lot of lobbyists in Montpelier?
There are a lot of lobbyists, yes.
Okay.
Yep. Good and bad. I mean, they get a bad rap a lot of times, and I also can see that, but they can be good at times as well. And I'll give you an example. In our Government Operations Committee, I mentioned we do charter changes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the city of St. Albans wanted to do a charter change, and it was a revitalization of the downtown, and part of it was they were going to put all the electric lines and phone lines underground.
Yes, okay.
And it was a very lengthy charter change because it included that with a bunch of other things. And we were pretty much set to approve the charter change when the lobbyists for the electric industry, the utilities industry, came in and said, whoa, in a provision as it's written in this charter change,
Mm-hmm.
every electric utility user in the state of Vermont would be paying for this to go underground.
Oh,
So unless they want to create a TIF district, that's specifically for that area to pay for it, you better change the wording on that charter change.
okay.
And so there's an example of good to have a group in the background reading over this lengthy bill,
Mm-hmm.
and especially when I'm not an expert in utility charges or usage or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an example of good to have somebody looking out for the way a particular bill was written.
Yeah, and that leads me to something else too, and I'm glad you brought that up, Mark. Many years ago, when Bernie Sanders was first running for the Senate, he was challenged by Richard Tarrant. And Richard Tarrant ran a negative ad about him stating, why didn't Bernie vote for the Amber Alert bill? And when Bernie, I knew the answer right off. But Bernie explained it as, the Amber Alert bill was 4 pages and a 44-page bill, and there was a whole bunch of other things that were not good.
Yeah.
Do you guys run into that same thing?
Well, 3 weeks ago, there was a letter to the editor in the Chronicle criticizing me for that very thing. At the end of the session, I usually put in all the papers a legislative wrap-up. No commentary, because that would be 5 pages long.
Yeah.
So it's a legislative wrap-up, but I was criticized that, Representative Higley didn't vote for half the stuff that he had talked about in that letter. Well, I had to go in and explain that most of the things that were in there that were talked about were in the budget bill or a fee bill. And I haven't voted for the budget bill or the fee bill for 8 years now. And I explained the reasons. So again, there's an example where, sure, there's some great things in here. I advocate for some things that are in the budget. But I said when it comes down to the bottom line, my frustration with the budget and the tax bill and fee bills that have to go with it every year to keep it up when the revenues aren't coming in, I can't support it. So there's an example.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up too, because so many times people get angry about this issue or that issue, and it's essentially you have to watch what it is you're sponsoring, co-sponsoring, or signing, because there's a lot of things in there that we don't understand. And I could give you examples, but this is, it would take hours and hours and hours.
Yeah.
What is some of the legislation that you've worked on that you're very pleased with?
Well, when you feel that you can, make a difference in a few people's lives with some legislation, that's the best. And I would say the thing over the years that I was most proud of was I had a Afghan war veteran come to me, young fella. Was concerned that he had, even since they came back, had been losing people to suicide, his friends.
Yep.
And
That
so
is
he,
a big concern,
oh,
yes.
yeah.
Oh, definitely.
And he came to me and he said, Mark, I want you to propose a bill down in Montpelier where anybody who was suspected of possibly being able to commit suicide in the military, if the family or the command thought there was a possibility of suicide, that they would be committed. And I said, geez, we can't do something like that, but let's look at what we can do.
Right.
So again, it was a resolution. It was treated more than just a lot of resolutions just basically get, signed off and brought onto the floor. This went through the General Housing and Military Affairs Committee. We took testimony from the Adjutant General. We took testimony from Bernie Sanders' office. We took testimony from veterans groups throughout the country. It all had to do with trying to get this awareness out there and the help that these military folks need to get counseling. Some of the simple things that this individual talked about was in going to counseling, the counselors need to know the military lingo. Pretty darn important.
Yes, it's like that with when I was a counselor for a while, and everywhere you go, there's a different set of jargon. When I worked in the prison, there was a set of jargon. When I worked for Tri-County, there was a different set of jargon that you used. What is some of the legislation that you've worked on that has proven to be very arduous?
Well, I'd say the biggest one was the healthcare bill that started years back. For 2 bienniums, I proposed moving to the federal exchange because Vermont Health Connect has been just such a dismal failure.
Yeah.
And I would say that's probably the one that I get the most complaints from my constituents. Everything from actually seeing somebody else's checks online, same name, different middle initial maybe, but they've been able to see their bank account number, their address, and fortunately we've got some honest folks in the state, and they were able to work things out and contact them and let them know that they're seeing that. But everything from that to trying to do a change of instance in their situation that they haven't been able to get through that Vermont Health Connect.
Yeah. So the problem that I'm seeing, and maybe you can enlighten me if I'm right or wrong here, I don't see a problem with the plan. I see a problem with the administration of the plan.
Well, correct. I mean,
they haven't administered it right. They haven't got the bugs worked out of it, and their computers or their software, whatever, isn't doing it. And the reason I say that is because when the Affordable Health Care Act went in, some states fought it. Where my son lives, which he lives in Los Angeles, Jerry Brown has said, you will make this work. And now he has insurance for the first time in 10 years because Jerry Brown said, you will make this work. So well, that was my question, is it the plan or the administration of it?
Well, I think it's partly the plan too, because people are telling me that it's unaffordable. Even talking about the affordability piece of it, it's been not affordable. And so there's some other issues that are coming down the pike. You realize that there was 4 doctors out of the Franklin County area that left the state. Granted, we've got more people on insured, the underinsured or non-insured, but there's been an issue about how to pay for it. And the provider tax seems to be every year looked at to include more and more folks. This past year was looked at to include dentists as well, which they backed off from. So there's some concern even going forward. But again, I think one of the things that would help is even the state of Oregon, who has a lot more folks than Vermont, April of one year, they made the decision to go to the federal exchange, and they did it by December of that same year. That everybody re-signed up, and I believe that it's going much smoother now that they've got their own, going to the federal exchange.
Okay. In Washington, D.C., of course, we see a lot of partisan bickering. Do you see this in Montpelier as well, or do you see some of it, or none of it, or what do you see in Montpelier? Well,
sure, we see some of it. And I think, like I'd mentioned earlier, with the supermajority down there that's in charge, we can only express our opinions and amendments or whatever it is as respectful as we can through either the committee process or the floor. But you know in the end how the vote's going to go. So again, I would say where Montpelier is maybe a little bit different is there's not as much grandstanding or frustration outbreaks on the floor, so to speak, because you just realize that's the way it's going to go down. It doesn't stop me from expressing my opinion, like I say, is in a respectful manner as I can, but I'm definitely going to express it.
Are you involved in a primary or not?
I am not.
You're not, okay.
No.
So the April 9th primary date really doesn't matter to you?
It doesn't affect me, no.
And I just wanted to, as a joke, I remember I told you a while ago, I'm not going to vote for you or your opponent because I'm not in your district.
No. Yeah.
People said, why aren't you going to vote for such as a, I'm not in their district, okay. So finally, why should people vote for you in November? What sets you apart from your opponent or anybody else that's running for a seat?
Well, I think as a self-employed general contractor since 1978, like I mentioned when I got out of the service, I'm aware of what it takes to run a business, and I've talked to businesses throughout my district time and time again about what continually goes on down in Montpelier. That granted, a lot of the bills and a lot of the things that are presented and passed down there in a perfect world are maybe they have merit, but again, when it comes down to it, and I have a lot of my constituencies that have businesses that say that it's going to hurt their business, I listen to that. And I definitely try to express that down there. That again, a lot of it, good intentions, unintended consequences in the end. Try to explain what my constituents are saying about whether it's the increase in minimum wage, whether it's the paid sick leave bill. Try to explain to them what a small business is going through, and hopefully folks will listen. Very good. Do you have a website? I do not have a website. You don't have a website, okay. No. If anybody wants to contact you, what's the best way to contact you? The best way is through my email address. Okay. And actually, if they wanted to get a hold of any legislator, it's the same. So it's my first initial, which is M, and then Higley, Higley, at leg.state.vt.us. Yeah, and that hooks you up with just about everybody. That if you know your legislator's first initial and last name, you can email them. Okay, very good, Mark. It has been a pleasure having you here today, and we are just about out of time. Hopefully, we can do this again if you'd like. I'd be glad to. Yeah, this is Terry Difazio for Dial It Up, and don't forget, August 9th is primary day, and general elections in November. And if you don't vote, don't complain to me. Bye.